G'day, and welcome to Say It With Guitars. I'm your host, Pete Cornelius. Each episode, I'll be digging deep and getting to hang with some of Australia's finest guitar pickers, songwriters, producers, collectors, and makers. I look forward to bringing you these fun conversations, and I hope you enjoy Say It With Guitars.
Hey there, friends. Hope you're doing very well. Thanks again for joining us on the pod. So what's going on? What's happening, you might say? Doing some rehearsals this week for our Get Together show with Richard Steele. So got a show in Launceston at the Royal Oak on the 18th and the 19th down at Kindred Hall. And it's also with a new little band with Scott Mannering on guitar. So it's going to be a fun night, folks. Get your tickets from my website, which is just petecornelius.com. It'd be great to see you. Come and support some live gigs. Very guitar-driven shows, bit of acoustic, bit of electric. You know the drill. Speaking of electric and acoustic, I'm going to go and catch up with Jeff Lang on Friday night, which I think is the day that this podcast gets released. Jeff was my first guest on the show. So look forward to catching up with Jeff and hearing the live gig. His new album, by the way, folks, is amazing. So do yourself a favour. So today's chat is with Adam Miller. Adam's a great instrumental guitar player from Newcastle in New South Wales. He's just got back from travelling around the UK, Europe and the US. We have a nice long chat today, so hope you enjoy it. Before we crack into today's show, I'd like to shout out to our Season 3 sponsors, Tarrant Guitars and Top Shelf Guitars. The custom workshop of award-winning luthier Billy Tarrant on the northwest coast of Tasmania uses locally and internationally sourced solid tone woods to create a wide range of custom guitars, including acoustic, electric, lap steel guitars and specialty instruments, showcasing his passion for superior tone and structural integrity. Tassie's one-stop custom workshop for custom-made guitars, all guitar repairs and services. Visit tarrantguitars.net.au. Top Shelf Instruments specialise in used and vintage guitars, pedals and amps, shipping worldwide from Hobart, Tasmania. They love helping players land exceptional instruments for manageable dollars, and guitars from Japan hold a special place in their hearts. New old guitars hit the website almost daily, so head on over to the website for this week's weird and wonderful offerings, topshelfinstruments.com.au. All right, on with the conversation. I'd like to welcome to the podcast today, Mr. Adam Miller. Adam, how you doing?
Good, man. Thanks so much for having me. I'm stoked to do this chat.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've been keeping an eye on what you're up to on the socials, and I thought Adam would be a great guest because he's so active, man. You're a busy boy. You're flying around overseas, doing shows around Australia.
Trying to make it all work, man. It's
it's a juggle.
Yeah.
So what does an average week look like in the life of Adam Miller? How do you balance? Because you are pretty active on the socials. Is that something that you have to make an effort for, or is that kind of naturally part of your personality? You like to share what you're up to, or
definitely not. I guess starting with that whole social media side of thing, I guess it's just part of. It's a necessary evil is the simplest thing, and I try to make content. It's a terrible word, and certain things, but I've definitely tried to just keep to things that interest me. And so I try to keep it to playing and, a bit guitar gear stuff and things because that's what I like to look at. I, try to do as little talking as possible, but I might try and change that because, people do appreciate it. Although I'm not someone that consumes YouTube and all those things either. Like my YouTube viewing a lot of the time was just ripping the audio from live concerts so I could listen to it in the car, not so much watching it.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, I guess that's sort of my relationship with social media, and especially because so much of my audience and playing is overseas, I have to, make as much reach out into those other areas as possible. So that's a huge part of the whole social media thing. I wouldn't say I concentrate on it. Like, I'm not thinking months ahead of planning, this is what's going to happen on social media this week. I have a lot of friends, especially overseas, who are, their life is YouTube and social media. And I was kind of shocked at the plans they have of, like, every week is they just film a TV show, really. And it takes the whole week. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, cool. That's fair enough. But I like to keep my other time. I do, a lot of performing, a lot of playing, a lot of practicing, a little bit of teaching, way too much emailing and booking work. And that's kind of the week in a nutshell, really.
That's great. Yeah, it's a whole new world, isn't it? This social, especially YouTube. Like, it's you see the guys that are popular. Like, there's a handful of people who, always at the top of the feed or top of the search results, and they're making, like, long form, interesting content. Like, it's very edited. It looks good. It sounds good. And their playing is, like, always interesting. It's not just fumbling around some old licks that they've been noodling on for years. It's always, like, a huge thought about, constructed thing, and it's free media. Like, it's such a investment, I suppose, for these people to get the clicks and to get the subscribers and to get the content up to a point, I suppose, where they make good bang from it. I guess that's the idea for a lot of these people. But
yeah, well, a lot of it is their full-time job now. Like, that is what they do. A lot of those guys are not out playing. That is their full-time job, is making these. They're literally, television stars now, in the old sense of the word. And it's kind of shocked me just how much it's grown. I guess because I wasn't really aware of it and I don't consume it, just how big it's gone in the last few years. And even I was looking at total social media sidetrack, but it's like I was looking at Rick Beato saying that his channel is now 8 years old or something, and I'm like, that's not that old. Like,
no,
in my head I'm like, well, he must have been doing it forever. And I'm thinking, well, I put my first video on YouTube in 2007 or something. Like, it's kind of crazy how much it's evolved and how much the acceptance of it is as well. Like, there was an early thing where you wouldn't put anything on YouTube because you were afraid people would steal it or not come to your gigs.
Yeah, exactly. And you were spending time and effort and energy in the place that wasn't important to you. Like, just using it as a business card or some sort of flyer for someone to advertise your next gig, your next session or album.
It was also impossible to film things. Like, that's what people don't remember either. Like, you didn't have a phone that could video anything in any sort of quality. Like, my biggest example of it, and probably why I have a disconnect with it, was this is literally 20 years ago now, but I was touring with Tommy Emmanuel in Australia, and YouTube had just come on, and his management at the time was so anti-YouTube. Like, we can't let anything get on YouTube in case, like, people don't buy the live concert DVD anymore or stop coming to concerts. And, I think it took another 4 years for them to embrace it. But I remember, like, I played with him a lot then, but I have, like, 2 20-second videos that were shot on a digital camera at the time. That's probably all it could do.
Yep.
And even that was sneaky because the management wouldn't even let me film something of us playing together. So it was, the difference now is insane.
Yeah, and like you said, it's so new. Like, and there was that real turning point where people were, like, concerned about merch sales and ticket sales, but yeah, it's one of those necessary evils, like you mentioned. It really is. I know I struggle with having to provide any sort of content. I really would rather be doing lots of other things, but it's just part of being an artist in the current climate, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're doing well, man. Having a podcast is a huge step as well.
Yeah, well, this has been fun. I've had a great time interviewing, people I look up to, all sorts of walks of the guitar life. So this is not only. I'm by no means doing this for any sort of personal self, ego stroking, advertising platform, but I'm really having a great time talking to people and sharing people's stories. It's one thing I appreciate as I get a little bit older is everyone's got a story, everyone has a different approach, and people are interested in long form media now. I think people are getting sick of the 20, 30 second grabs.
I'm all for 10-second grabs. But yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it's a new world. But yeah, I'm loving it. This is good.
Awesome, man.
So I had I've been listening to your material a lot in the last few days just to sort of get my head around your approach to the 6 strings that we're all given. Whoops, sorry, I just kicked my microphone.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying how you're not in a hurry. It's like you've got I think your voice is a real clean, pure guitar sound, and you're just not in a hurry at all to get the message out. And the melody can take a couple of minutes to get to the point, or might not even have a necessary peak. It's just this, real subtle. I don't know. Does that sound kind of like your approach? Does that relate to what goes on in your head when you play guitar?
I think it's a little bit of both. I am very much what I realised a few years ago is I'm very much a songwriter, even though I don't sing. In my head, I'm still kind of, for the most part, writing pop songs with extended improvisation sections. Like that's kind of how I think about it. And so definitely first and foremost, melody is like the priority. And I'm probably thinking something that you could usually maybe sing and usually go that way, or you could, obviously it's just because I think I started playing guitar so young, my voice hadn't broken and I couldn't sing along. And by the time I could sing, I wasn't very good at singing. So it just didn't translate very well. But that's kind of the whole approach I have with playing, and especially writing and the things I create, is that idea that you're, I'm just basically trying to write sort of pop songs still, which is a little strange, but I guess that's how. So it's melodies are usually no quicker than like words you could get out. I get like the same sort of idea, and then improvisation wise, I kind of extend into that flow as well. It's that idea of the very like expanding on the melody and expanding on the theme of the song, rather than here's everything I can do quickly. Yeah.
And it totally comes across. I can hear that there's lots of melody and there's lots of space and restraint. You can definitely tell you can put the pedal down if you need to, but I think most of it is nice melody, restraint, and and like you said, I was listening to Beyond Reason, the album today, and they sound like songs, absolutely. There's sort of a lot of movement, and a lot of the guitar tones really help each other out. Like there's sort of, like I said, I think the main thing is the clean with that sort of spatial reverb around it. And then all of a sudden a banjo will come in. It's like, whoa, that's cool. And then there's like this baritone guitar or even like this fuzzed out, like on that second track, seemed like a good idea. I think it's called. There's this massive gated sort of fuzz in there that just comes in out of nowhere. It's like, oh, that's awesome. And then all of a sudden it comes back to the refrain or back to the
Beyond Reason, that album was recorded and mainly written. It was totally written through like all the lockdowns and things, and it was a lot of, you know, as I think we were all doing, kind of soul searching, especially musicians, going, what are we doing with our lives right now? And so I was going back to a lot of like the music I loved earlier on, which was all this singer-songwriter stuff. And I used a lot of those elements when writing these songs and then with recording and production ideas. So instead of just sort of doing the live-ish guitar trio thing, I kind of went to, and I love that idea of using the guitar to create all these things. Like I purposely didn't get a keyboard player in or anything. Like I like actually going, whoa, is that a guitar as well? Is that a guitar? Is that a guitar? And using all those elements together. And, you know, with the two songs you mentioned, like the thing that sounds like a banjo on Aging is actually a Mule solid body resonator, their model called a Mavis.
Oh,
and
that's the Mavis.
And I've got it tuned baritone. So it's tuned, I have it C standard now. I think I had it in B standard when I got it, but that was just a little too sloppy. But anyway, so the banjo sound is it mic'd up just in front of the resonator cone, because it, you know, it makes some sound, but it has no body. It only has the resonator cone to make a sound. So it's got this plunky banjo vibe. And then actually on that song Aging, it's you know, I can't remember which side I mixed it on, but you know, it's the banjo sound of the Mavis on one side, and then the other side is it plugged in with probably with a harmonic trem going, and you know, a little bit of fuzzy sort of drive, and very much influenced by the Canadian guys, the Ariel Posens and the Joey Landreths and that sort of thing, to give it that kind of wash. Creating those textures with different things. And then that next song seemed like a good idea. Was just essentially, that song wasn't written. I had just the main theme of the melody. And this album I recorded with my band in LA. And so we were on Zoom just doing it across the internet. And they could be in the same room and play live together. And I kind of orchestrated it with my hands on a laptop screen as we went. And that song, I was just like, oh, let's just jam along, play this. And I was like, now go to a different key, now go to a different key. And I just stitched it all together after the fact to create this whole thing. And kind of went nuts with, you know, taking little bits and, you know, there's a big riff with that fuzz, where that fuzz comes in. And it basically, I just heard Joel Gottschalk, that plays bass for me, he just played this line later in the song. So I cut that out and created this whole section out of that sort of thing, and it was fun just to have lots of different guitars on that. So I think
great.
before the fuzz comes in, there's like a nylon string guitar solo, so it's all over the place. Yeah.
So did a lot of those songs come together in that studio environment when you had time and space to work on things, or did you kind of have a rough guide or map of like what instruments to come in, like all the different movements, or is that kind of just like, all right, here's the rough song with the band and then I'm going to see what happens on the fly, or like how did the arrangements come about?
For that album in particular, it was a lot of it. So I had to record like pretty set guide tracks for the guys because we couldn't play live across Zoom. You can't actually do that yet. So they had pretty set things to play to for the most part. Even with, that song Aging that has the mule on it, those banjo parts and the baritone parts were played before they even played drums and bass. Like they just came when I was just tracking the song. That was part of it. Yep. And I thought about going in and re-recording it after the drums, but it was like, no, I did it. It's great. It was just done in the moment, straight up. And
cool.
Yeah. And then, so I think it was really only that song seemed like a good idea that I kind of constructed after the fact. The rest of it was pretty well composed to try and get through the sessions. We only had, I think 2 days really to get it done. Across the internet. Okay. And then, I think I probably spent a year on it after that to finish it.
And how does that look like for you? Like what are you going to a studio? Have you got a set up at home? And if you do have a setup at home, what's your interface set up, like your microphone techniques? Are you using plugins, or what's your go-to there?
Yeah, so I've been, I guess I've had many lives in the music industry, and I was mainly a producer and mastering engineer for a long time. It was how I did a lot of things. So I have gear at home. I'm very reluctant to say I have a studio because I do not. I have a room in our apartment currently where I have, really good mic pre's, like, all sorts of like Neve clones and tube preamps and Shadow Hills compressor, and what am I using? I use a Motu interface, which I've used for a while now. Which just it's a really great thing for allowing me to incorporate hardware back through when doing mastering and mixing stuff. So it's all real. I don't use any plugins for guitar stuff. Like everything was a real 2-rock amp with a real microphone and a real speaker, and but not played very loud. It's literally apartment volumes. So I'm kind of pulling all those things pretty quietly, but just using good mics and to kind of do it. So,
Yep. What's your go-to mic for a cabinet?
So a couple
different moods, different flavors.
a little bit. Like a ribbon is always the winner for me, usually. Most of the sounds are some sort of ribbon microphone. The one I've used for years, and I used it on the last 4 albums I put out to a degree, is an SE Voodoo VR1 microphone. And they're really well priced in Australia. I don't know how much they are now. Anyway, but little black ribbon, and it just sounds remarkable. You put it like, maybe 20, 25 centimeters back from the speaker, and it's just perfect. It's done. It's like, it's the sound of a record, and it's the sound of the guitar you want to hear. So that mic is awesome. Great. And I usually blend it with some sort of condenser microphone. For a long time, it's been I've used a Bee's Knees Arabella tube mic, which is like a kind of like a U47 sort of thing, big one.
Yep.
I've also got a TLM 102 Neumann, which is a great tiny microphone and super quick to set up, and it also sounds great. And then I think a lot of Beyond Reason as well. I got this AEA R22 ribbon, which is another really cool ribbon. It's actually my favorite acoustic guitar microphone now. I love that thing on an acoustic guitar.
Is that the one that doesn't have as much proximity? It's more of a close range ribbon? Yeah,
that's the idea that you can. It's especially for recording at home with acoustic guitar. I don't know. It doesn't seem to hear the world. I don't know how. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense. But I can hear less traffic noise and birds when I'm using it, and so and it just picks up the guitar. The acoustic guitar the way I want to hear it. It just has all the magic and. But right. Mellowed out, doesn't have that bitey top end thing that condensers have.
Yep. Sounds like you've got a good little system happening there, and I must agree. I think ribbons on any stringed instrument just bring out the natural beauty of them, and especially if you can use the null rejection to your advantage. I've been liking the M160s, the Bayer Dynamics as well lately.
The Bayers I'm talking into a Bayer right now, actually. They're great mics.
Yeah, I was going to say it looks like a Bayer of sorts. Is it an M88 or something?
This is an M69. It's an old one I've had forever.
M69.
Yeah, it's got yellow tape on it as well, holding it all together, which has been on there for about 20 years, actually. Anyway,
Vintage tape.
Vintage tape. Yeah, the ribbon mic thing is awesome.
Yeah, I'm super glad that I stumbled across a ribbon. I remember I was going through, I think I got off the boat one morning, like early in, when I say the boat, it's the Spirit of Tasmania. I got into Melbourne for some running gigs, and I must have been, because I used to dock at like 6 o'clock, so I was like, all right, I better go and hang out at Billy Hyde's for a few hours until I have to get to the gig. And they were having like this garage sale at the back of one of their stores, and they had these two, pretty cheap ribbon mics, and they were like going out the door for $50 a piece. I was like, all right, I'm going to invest in these, and then it was the beginning of the end for.
Was that a legacy? Condensers. Were they a legacy one? Do you remember?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the ones that look like a Royer.
Exactly. Yeah, it was the 122 sort of rip off made by Legacy, and they had a big one as well, like quite a big, large. Nice. Ribbon that looked like I don't know, it had like a round top on it. I'm not sure what they were trying to emulate, but it was a sort of long ribbon. But I got into those.
That's awesome. My first one was
Sorry,
my first one was that same Legacy ribbon mic. I still have it.
Yeah, right.
And use it as a basically as the drum mic at gigs where we just need a little bit of extra push. The ribbon must be so destroyed in it by now. I've never had it replaced, but I just sit it in front of the kick drum and pointing at the snare, and it's like a mono overhead vibe for gigs, and it sounds unbelievable. Yep. Like everyone's like, wow, the drums mic. It's like just that one, and it's really cool. Yeah. If people haven't experimented with ribbons, go and get one. They're hard to get cheap now, though. I looked the other day for some reason for a gift for someone and couldn't find those nice bargain ribbons anymore. Oh well.
Yeah, I think the word's out everyone's looking for the good gear now.
Mm.
That's cool, man. And did you mix and master the whole project? Is it kind of
for Beyond Reason I did. Yeah, I had this very set sound of what I was trying to achieve, and it was just easier to go through it myself in the end with that one and just make it right to the end. So that was really fun, and because I've had, I think the 2 albums before that I had mastered by a great mastering engineer where is he? He's in North Carolina now, Dave McNair, who does a lot of the snarky puppy stuff, and I met him through Charlie Hunter.
Oh, right.
And he's amazing, and I particularly got him for those because they were the first albums that I was doing that were getting released on vinyl, and I had no idea how to master for vinyl at that stage. I'd never done one, so
sure.
But yeah, a couple of years on, kind of worked it out a little bit better and confident to do it. So it was cool, and so that was Beyond Reason was the first one I mastered for vinyl myself. So yeah, super fun.
Always a learning curve. Like mastering to me is just some dark art, really. That almost need a science degree to really work out. Analytics for.
It's a very mysterious sort of thing. I got super into it when I first started doing recordings for the bands I was in and my own stuff. I think it was the end of 1998, and on a computer. Mm-hmm. And there was, 1/20th the speed of an iPhone, and and so I was always trying to work out, well, what was this thing and what is this thing that, people are doing, and why does it happen? And I used to just ring mastering engineers and just ask them. And then, especially when I started producing other artists, I would get them to pay to get their stuff mastered, and then I would go along to the session and just ask all the questions and take kind of pretty serious notes of what was going on, and probably a little cheeky really, but it was great. It was just learning on the job and hearing how the stuff you've been worked on and happened. So yeah, it was cool.
Yep. Yeah. If the engineer's okay, for a sit-in session or whatever, that's the greatest way to do it.
Exactly.
Especially if you've been involved with the project from the get-go, if you've recorded it, you've mixed it, you're a bit attached to it. You want to see it go out the door with the best sonic approach that you can. So that's good. Nice bit of control and learning. Yeah, right. So that's kind of been half of your bag as well, is studio-based recording for other people. Is that mainly for bands that you've been in, or?
No, well, definitely that, but also there was a period, and then, time disappears, but it was 16 years ago now, I realise, when I was doing quite a lot of it and playing for other artists at that stage as well. And it was probably before my own music was really starting to take off, and I just had to concentrate on doing what I do. But but it's fun. I just started to get back into a little bit of it again for other people, and producing some songs for Darren Jack at the moment. So that's kind of been really fun to record someone else's really loud guitar. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Jacko's a legend.
Yeah.
So have to get him on the show at some stage.
For sure.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, he loves a loud strat through a big super.
Yeah, well,
works.
he's evolved a little bit now. So it's what's been really cool actually the last few years, because I guess I haven't done too much in Australia. It's sort of my career has sort of taken me straight overseas, and it is because what I do is niche. Like I'm an instrumental guitar player that is somewhere between jazz and blues, which is neither, which means in Australia you get neither gig. So it's like, that's sort of been it. But the last couple of years, Darren Jack did start to use me as a second guitar player because he'd been writing these songs that needed all these second guitar parts. So spending some time around the blues festivals in Australia playing with him has been really awesome and introduced me to a whole bunch of people I hadn't met before. So that's been really fun.
Yeah, he's done his time. He's definitely played a lot of shows around the country. He has a lot of mates, a lot of people he looks up to and respects, and everyone respects Jacko back. So yeah, and to be chauffeured around, playing his material with his crew. Yeah, that's a good little introduction for the for the Australian blues scene. So that's cool. Did you get up to? I think actually I might have even seen you play at Thredbo. Were you at Thredbo a couple of years ago with Jacko?
Yeah. So that was really fun, and even got a mountain bike ride in the day. So that was awesome.
Oh, nice. Excellent. Yeah, me and my bass player Sim as well. We're also mountain bike tragics, and we took our bikes, but. The days that we had flagged for riding it just pissed down with rain and we didn't get on the mountain. They closed all the trails down.
Yeah, they closed the chairlift as I was getting to the top.
Yeah.
And then realised, okay, I have to ride down now in this. And yeah, it was bad. I was a pretty serious mountain biker as a teenager. So the last time I'd ridden Thredbo was the national titles in 98. And so, a good 20,
the Crankworks?
3 years old.
No, it's not Crankworks. What do they call it? The Cannonball. The Cannonball at Thredbo, isn't it?
Yeah. So anyway, had to ride down that in the insane pouring rain. Realised I was the last person on the mountain and had to get down to get to a gig. So that was a pretty treacherous run down. But survived.
Pressure.
It was good. Yeah.
That's great. How did the overseas thing? I know that you just mentioned that the market in Australia for instrumental jazz, blues, guitar isn't that much of a thing. So I guess naturally, America and Europe were your markets. How did that whole how did you initiate that? You just when you were younger, just book a plane ticket and make a few emails and hope to catch up with some people, or did you just send your CD to some people, or how does that all start?
It was
for you?
Really it was on the ground. So I, 15, 16, maybe longer ago, 15, 16, 17 years ago, I'd never really been out of the country by myself. People didn't travel internationally the way they do now. And so I booked a flight to the US just to go, just to kind of check it all out, work out how it works, look at, venues and just go on an adventure kind of really by myself. And it was pretty insane. It was like, it just, it wasn't major because I had no connections. I literally had nothing. I just turned up to certain cities and just sort of had a look around. And, certain cities, like Nashville, for example, was horrible. It just, it was so closed door, so nothing happening unless you were in the clique that I couldn't leave there fast enough. But then, in random meetings, like I went on this insane road trip, caught a Greyhound bus from New York City for 10 hours to see Charlie Hunter play, who's been one of my biggest influences forever. And it was a mission. And, in my head, I thought this festival would be like thousands of people. I'm like, it's going to be like the big day out. It's just going to be huge. Yeah. And I get there and there's maybe 100 people. Like, that's it.
Oh, wow.
And it was just like, it was one of the most incredible gigs I've seen in my life. And, I already had albums at that stage, and I nervously went up to Charlie after the gig, found him and said, hey, I'd like to give you a copy of my CD. I'm a huge fan. I wrote this song in dedication to you. Gave it to him, walked away, and then, realized I had no idea how to get back to the city. Like, pre-Uber, phone had no reception. You didn't have data on your phone. And he's looking at me going, man, how did you get here? And so he offered to give me a ride back to the hotel. So, so then we went out for dinner after it was a daytime festival. So, I got to meet Charlie very early on then, and that was incredible. Just That's as a friend. He didn't hear me play for years later. And then in that same, I think it was like the next day, it was literally the next day I went back to New York City, and I went to go to see Les Paul play at the Iridium in Broadway when he was still alive. And I didn't even think of it. I took my guitar with me because I'd already talked to someone at a guitar store that day that everyone takes guitars to get signed. And I was staying in a hostel and I was really scared to leave my guitar somewhere. And so I get to the front door and it's sold out. I didn't buy tickets in advance, didn't even think about that. And I just joked and said, I'm a guest artist tonight anyway. And they went, oh, okay. And so they took me downstairs, backstage, and to Les, eating dinner. And so I did 2 shows with Les Paul that night on Broadway in New York. And I think that night especially was a turning point going, oh, okay, I am good enough to like sort of do this, to be a guitar player. Probably. I'd already toured with Tommy Emmanuel and things at that point, but even still, being overseas is a little different sometimes, of going, how does it work? So that sort of gave me the bug, but it was years of work after that before I could sort out visas and touring and all the things you got to have in place to actually make it work. Unfortunately, that it's not just turning up and going. It's a serious amount of background work. And so I could see the US was opening up to me the easiest in a lot of ways. So I just tried to make that work any way I could, and playing at like the NAMM show, like the big thing in LA, the big music trade show, just because it was a great access to press. And, going back, my first one was 2010. Like, it was I got offered a record deal that I did sign. It didn't actually the album never came out on that label in the end. But, like those sort of things happened there then where people were looking for talent because it was pre-social media. Like Instagram didn't exist. Facebook, I think, kind of did, but it wasn't what it is now. You probably couldn't put a video on it.
Yep.
And so it just everything just kind of
been the thing.
Yeah, just maybe. And it was and it was just sort of snowballing sort of from there as things went on.
So how did you get to now? Was that through a brand? Were you there representing anyone, or you just managed to sneak in somehow?
My first NAMM show was for Cole Clark Guitars, actually, which was really cool.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I was heavily involved with them at the time, and I was sent there as their player and I think the head of international sales at the time as well. Sort of crazy. Anyway, it was a...
Right.
Yeah. And, but then from there, I think the next NAMM show I did for Two Rock Amplifiers, and that was that show, there was... Obviously, I was there performing at the NAMM show, but they also ran a concert at night, which basically just had every major guitar player ever. It was terrifying. It was like, I'm trying to remember what. So yeah, the night was run by the Matt Schofield Trio. That was the house band.
Sure. Yep.
Yep. And they got up through the night like everyone, like Mick from the Pedal Show before the Pedal Show existed. Eric Gales, Josh Smith. I'm pretty sure. I can't even remember everyone now. It was nuts. It was just like Tomo Fujita. It was every guitar player ever. And they asked me to open the show solo because I was the only artist they had that could do a solo show. And it was terrifying. Right. Like literally the front table was the entire staff of Berkeley guitar department. And yeah. And so that particular show opened, a lot more doors through the US, literally just from that one night of playing through a packed room of press and guitar-y people. Yeah.
Well, that's perfect, isn't it? That's the ideal scenario is if you're thrusted into that situation to play for those sort of people. It's like it just saves so much time. If you can get over your nerves and put on a great performance, bingo. Like that's a direct injection to, a lot of people's inboxes right there.
Yeah. And that was sort of my idea. It was like, well, until I can get a work visa, this stuff was, sort of legal. I wasn't getting paid. So it was, there were things I could do to be seen and be part of everything before, social media and those sort of things really kicked off. And it kind of just worked from there. And then eventually sorted out my work visa and, started touring and playing and then expanding into Europe and the UK and Japan and just clawing at any connection I could to kind of make those things work and, jump off, where I knew I had fans from, the limited online stats and things and just kind of making it happen. Yep.
So did you manage to jump on any support tour systems or any tours like that, any shows, or is it more just like here's my trio, here's my solo act, just go from club to club, potentially festivals and things like that?
Unfortunately, no. I've never managed to get an international support thing. It's been really hard to coordinate those things from a distance. I guess one of the hardest things is the rest of the world just thinks Australia is so far away. They forget it's one flight away, maybe two for you, but literally, it's not hard to get to anywhere in the world, and so sometimes orchestrating those things from a distance was a little harder. And I kind of had enough of a fan base to, sell tickets doing my own headline show, and it just made more sense a lot of the time to sort of concentrate my efforts into that. But one of the things I did do a lot early on was bouncing off, like my first 2 trips to Europe were actually in-store performance tours for guitar and amp companies. And so that was really amazing that they actually, the first ones were for the company, the conglomerate, the parent company that used to own Two Rock amplifiers, Tone King amplifiers, Fano guitars, Gene Baker, Cole guitars. And so they kind of made all these products and they owned it all. And so they got me to do, and it was that same thing. It was this same, and it was probably from that show at the NAMM show that I did for them that they're like, oh, you can actually demonstrate this stuff really great. You don't need backing tracks. You're a nice person to be around. And so I, did a few tours through Europe and the UK with them, just, with their head of sales and just playing guitar stores. And they basically just became my concerts. I am a super gearhead, and I have been involved in lots of aspects of the industry. And so I understand guitars, so I can explain everything and understand it all.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they just became concerts where I just, play some different guitars all the time. And it was really, because I think also until that point, nearly all my solo playing had been acoustic guitar. If you play solo, you play acoustic. If you play with the band, you play electric. But on that tour, because it was all electric guitar products, I played electric guitar all the time, and I had the most glorious guitar sound every night, which doesn't happen when you play acoustic. And so it really started this transition from me really kind of mainly playing electric for a long time, because even when I play solo, because it just sounds so good.
Yeah, the joys of playing electric guitar live compared to acoustic guitar live. There's so much difference in that connection between what you want it to sound like and what it actually sounds like. Like that is such a barrier sometimes, playing acoustic instruments. Have you found the same thing?
I'm, super particular about it. And I did, work with Cole Clark for a long time and with their pickup system as well. And I've modified things and worked with a lot of different companies. And when it works, it is glorious. But it's all just dependent on a sound guy at the end of the day. So if you cannot travel with your own sound guy, and especially overseas, Australian sound guys seem to get, I guess, especially with the wide stream nature of what Tommy Emmanuel does, and then, a lot of the other like acoustic artists in Australia, like Lloyd Spiegel and that sort of thing, for example, they get that, the acoustic guitar needs to sound like a whole band. Whereas, especially overseas, I just had this problem where they would take all the bass out and take all the bottom end, and then they would add treble, and then they would compress it, and you just had nothing left. And all my, solo playing is very bassline heavy. I want it to be the bass player. And then, but with an electric guitar, you basically would put the amp there, and they just put a mic in front of it, and they'd turn it up really almost inappropriately loud and go done, with all the bottom end. And it was, so it just made life easier on the road. So what I ended up doing a lot of the time even with the acoustic, was I moved to a magnetic pickup for a long time, so that if the sound guy just wasn't helping me, I would just use whatever backline amp they had and just plug the acoustic into the electric amp, and then it would sound right. So, it's just always that balance with the thing. But when it does sound right, it's great. I just did a camp teaching with Tommy Emmanuel a little while ago, and the sounds we had at the concerts each night were amazing, and I mainly played acoustic then because it just sounded so good.
Mm-hmm. What's Tommy's secret to a good live tone? Is it purely his guitar and his approach to
bringing his own sound guy?
An absolute right. So his own sound guy is the ticket.
Tommy. I actually did some interviews with Tommy last year where I interviewed him for a guitar magazine, and actually for 2 guitar magazines, and Tommy essentially has, other than management and agent, 2 full-time employees, and they're his lighting guy and his sound guy. And that was like, that's what you need to make a show work, especially when it's just you on stage. And because anyone can destroy the sound. Like, that's the thing. As soon as they've got control of it, it's sort of done. And
and it's hard mentally to bring it back, isn't it? Once you've got that curtain of like anxiety or struggle, or you're trying to you're working too hard. It needs to be as easy as you can make it, and then the show is going to be 100% better.
And especially when you're you're instrumental as well, like that's all you've got. You've got nothing else. Like you there's nothing to overcome what's happening in that moment. So that's kind of for the most part where I've ended up with the electric guitar thing, because it just, even if they do change it in front of house, hopefully I've just got an amp sitting behind me that I'm liking the sound of, and I'll, because honestly the audience, maybe it won't impact their enjoyment, the sound, but if I'm playing bad and in my head about it, then it's a huge issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at least if you've got your own control, you can make yourself on stage sound good, and hopefully it translates through the show. 100%. And another question I had after hearing the other record you put out, what's it called? Gallery. Tell me about that. Was that basically you sitting down performing in a gallery? Because there's background noise going on, so I'm presuming it's a live little
That's
show.
Exactly what it is.
Just doing a bunch of pedals?
Yeah. Entirely what it was. I was actually mid-recording Beyond Reason when I had just this gig at a gallery, art gallery in Newcastle, and I'd been doing them, once every sort of 6 months, and I was in a bit of a strange arty mood, and I went, I'm just going to go in and take all these pedals that I used to use a lot, but I hadn't for a long time, and going to create music inspired by the art around me, essentially. And that's what I did. And I took in that SE ribbon mic that I mentioned earlier and my little portable recorder. I think it was a Tascam then. And I just hit record and played the gig, and that was kind of it. And it kind of just went past really quick. And, a lot of the talking in it as well is because people were talking to me. Like I knew, the classic thing where people come and talk to you, because I knew a lot of people there. It was a bit of a social scene, and I didn't care. I was just there. Yeah. Hey, and I didn't really think much about what I was playing the whole time. I was just
perfect.
I was just sort of there, and it was I was very passive in everything sort of going on. And I didn't really think about it again until a year later. And I pulled up the recording because I started Patreon, and my thing there was to release just live recordings that I had, because I've been documenting live recordings for so long, and I don't really want to release them as albums, but I wanted a platform for people to be able to hear them if they wanted to. So I found that one, and I was I was blown away by actually how good it was, because the whole thing is nothing was pre-written. Everything is improvised in the moment entirely. Fantastic. 100%. And so, and it just so I put it on the Patreon unedited, and then I went back into it and just kind of took out every little really bad thing that I played. Like, just there was a few things that were like, oh, that's not good. Or, there's one song I think that goes for about 8 or 9 minutes, and I think it actually went for like 28 minutes or something. That's how. Right. So I kind of cut it back into its sort of best bits. But that was it. And it's how I kind of play at home like that a lot. And there's other environments where I will create these soundscape sort of songs. So, and I'd always wanted to do an album that way, but committing to it is really hard. Like actually doing it home and creating it, I don't think I would have ever got to it. So it's cool to kind of, and it's been really well received, which is kind of amazing as well.
Yeah, I want to tap into that thing like you mentioned. Like that, there probably is how a lot of people play at home, creating some sort of textural loop, whether it be sub-octave or high octaves or reverse, all that sort of stuff, and then they can play ideas over that to work on as a training tool, but also as probably just like just like casual guitar. I don't know, just to stretch out ideas or just to, fill in a few hours, because it's a pretty good way to do it. Like, that's a great way to spend your day. But I think if you went into a studio or you're recording at home and you were, making this the recording, it would come out totally different, I think. If you preempted the pressure. Whereas if you're in that live environment where you almost are part of the artwork, like, you could almost be a part of the exhibition.
Yeah. Well, that is the idea.
There's no
of
pressure, and
that is the idea of the gallery, is that it is all part of the gallery experience. I'm not like backing music, like they don't, they didn't want someone there playing covers in the background or even like singing at people. It was just to create this vibe and space. And I do really kind of dig that whole idea of doing that. But I couldn't have achieved it, being at home. And even when you talk about like the talking and noise in the recording, because I had that ribbon mic, it actually, like, I could have just made it sound totally studio and removed, because the most of the talking comes from the stereo mics on the portable recorder. But I don't know, without it kind of lost. It was like almost sometimes I heard that I was responding to like the person laughing in the background or something. Like, it became part of the conversation and the inspiration of it. So, I made the decision to keep that all in. It's kind of cool.
Oh, it's perfect. It gives it context, and it makes it a real thing. It sounds like you're playing in a room and you're reacting to people's,
lack of interest.
It sounds great. I was. Have you heard Shannon Bourne's album? He's got an instrumental guitar album.
It's similar.
Like, he
similar
really
vibes.
Takes it. Yeah, he's got some crazy ideas on effects and goes to town. It's great.
Yeah,
what is
awesome,
that,
man.
What is that effect you're running? That kind of, it's like a pitch. It's like an alternative. Or it's maybe like an octave up, or it's like a low bit rate sort of looper thing. I don't know. Like, what is that? Is it?
Okay, so there's two. Yeah, so on Gallery, most of the sounds and the effects are actually produced by the Strymon Timeline, and that's what I use as the looper as well. And so when you connect a MIDI controller to that, you can access halftime and reverse of the loop. And so that means that it will half speed and go down the octave, or it will double speed and go up the octave. And then you can reverse and play that back. And so through the duration of different songs, I'm doing all of that. I'm playing something backwards, then I'm playing over it forwards, then reversing it backwards again. And it just creates this layer. Yep. And that was something that the Line 6 DL4, the old green pedal did.
Yeah.
You know, I came across it through Bill Frisell, and that's the pedal that he still uses. He just moved to the newest one.
Yep.
And it just, you know, it creates all these really, you can just go to town with it and just have, really amazing kind of soundscapes once you understand how to control it. Then a lot of my other stuff, and especially on the last two studio albums, is a pedal called the Chase Bliss Mood. And
right.
It's got a looper and a delay pedal in it. And it's a little complex to work, but what I realized, and total touring decision. So the timeline with a MIDI controller was, you know, like pretty big, I guess, physically.
Yeah.
You know, not that big for modern pedal boards, but too big for me to warrant traveling with when most of what I do isn't in time looping, like I did on that album Gallery. But usually if I put a loop, it is just a free time atmospheric thing. And so I went looking for something that I could create that on, but was way smaller. And the Mood was the thing that does it. So it has a looper in it, but it's kind of a preset idea, and you don't start and stop it. It's different in that it's constantly listening to like the last couple of seconds that you've been playing, and then you just hit start. And then you can't overdub on it either. It's just like whatever you just played, that's what it loops. And so some of the kind of crazier sounds are usually that pedal, because you can do some pretty whack sort of stuff with it. And it's very much a pedal for people that actually turn knobs while they're going. But I've just worked out a few presets that are very intuitive for playing live and just creating things in the moment.
That's great. Yeah, I haven't really delved into as much of that spatial kind of modulation pedal. I'm a bit of a traditionalist when it comes to guitar tones, but I was definitely inspired when I heard some of that stuff today. I know I was hearing a lot of Frisell style of tones and bits and pieces going on. So I definitely might have to get myself a timeline. I know that I've got the smaller El Capistan, but that's more of just a delay. It just does.
Well, actually, you can do some pretty funky looping on that as well. I don't know if you've ever got into it, but the C, I think it's the C. I had one for a long time, and I used to loop into each other. I have a song
it's like the
which is similar
sound effect.
Yeah, and it has half speed and double speed as well, and you can then loop over. It's the El Capistan's cool because it does it. It's like a tape. You can hear it speeding up and slowing down. It goes, it's not instant.
And it gets grittier and grittier as the time
as you go on
progresses.
Yeah. So that, or, you know, the Line 6 DL4, the new one, I just got one of those as well to make it a little, because this Gallery album has been so well received. Actually, mid last US tour, I'm like, people are asking me to play it, and I don't have the looper to play something that loops in time. So I got one of those on the road, actually, just as a little quick annex to my tiny pedal board, so I could reproduce that stuff on the road now. So one extra pedal.
How do you go reproducing it? Like not necessarily in terms of equipment, but I mean, like, do you have to try and recreate what you've played? Like, is that what you try and do? Or you just go, here's an improv within that guideline?
There's kind of, so, you know, obviously when I finished the album, I named them based on, you know, what I was literally hearing when I heard it back. And I tried to think of kind of art gallery-ish names as well. So that was kind of fun. And there were definitely just a few standout tracks that people really loved. So I just learnt to roughly play them. Like, so whatever the original loop was, I had to work out, okay, how did I actually make that in the first place? And, you know, going back to the start of our conversation, because I am kind of melody focused, I found that I did kind of write some sort of melody in the moment of each thing. Like there is something to grab onto there. So I usually, most of the things are kind of expanded that way. And I've got, I did so I think there's 4 or 5 songs that I kind of worked out how to play again. And I recorded versions of them for YouTube, as the film clip thing you do when you release an album now, as you have to do. And so they're kind of the start of those recreations of how I play things. And, you can kind of hear that they're different to the album, but, there's an element of it there where people go, oh yeah, that is that song. Cool.
Okay. Yeah. I guess that's it, isn't it? Like if you've got your theme and you can improvise on that, and people probably expect some sort of other experience as well, as long as they can, recognise it to a certain degree.
Yeah. And, especially with my audiences and the way I play is that every song is totally different every night. And that is the idea of improvised music, is that you can take things in a whole different way every night you play. And that is the adventure of it, that every show is an experience. And, there's a few of my songs, there's very few of my songs that have a consistent arrangement where this is what happens. The drum beat and bass line really have to be this for it to work. But then so much else is just, I'll start a song 20 beats per minute faster or slower than it is on a record. And maybe then with a slightly different feel, and just depending on how I feel on the night. And it's intentional. It's like, okay, no, this song is going to feel like this tonight rather than it just be that. And obviously, I play the melody the same usually. So the idea is that you can hear it is the song, but then where it develops from there can be, completely different. And that goes for whether I'm playing it solo, and probably even more so if I'm playing it with a trio, because I have a bunch of consistent players around the world, but, sometimes my last New York show, the 2 guys I played with were totally new and we didn't get a rehearsal. They got the songs and they got the chord charts, and, I'm rather than be really critical of no, this song goes like this, I'm just like, no, let's just see how it takes. And I write, my songs in general, Beyond Reason is probably not a good example of it because they are very sort of structured songs, but is that they're always written quite free. They're kind of simple, 16 bar sort of songs. On a chord chart, they look very basic, and I just leave it that they can kind of develop from there.
Well, that's perfect. If you've got a rough idea of the melody, the time feel, and you've got good players, it can go anywhere. And it will go anywhere if you sort of let the reins off and let the people sort of create the way that they naturally create and interact with other musicians. That is such a magical moment when the whole unit acts together and can move around in different themes and moods, and
and that is the joy.
Part of.
That's kind of the joy of playing with other people and empowering people to have that freedom in my music has always been sort of one of the really fun things, and it's probably part of how I get to play with really good players all the time, because they feel that freedom of, oh yeah, cool, I'll do that gig, that's fun. It's
Yeah. That's great, man. And so what's coming up for you? Do you have much work around here? I know you've just got back from the States, is that right?
Yeah, I was back from the States maybe for a couple of months now. Did a very intense tour there. I'm back in the States in September, then Europe and the UK, which I haven't been to for a long time. Hopefully some hopefully some recording in that time. I kind of have 3 album projects that I need to get out of my system as well. That try to make that all happen. And, you know, still a lot of shows around Newcastle. I'm from Newcastle, and Sydney. And then maybe a little bit beyond around Australia if I can kind of sort it out. It's, it's definitely just harder for me to book shows in Australia. So getting the right venues and that sort of thing, I would love to just play around here more, but the offers are elsewhere at the moment.
Yeah, and it is difficult. You know, a lot of the great festivals are dwindling. You know, I noticed that Wangaratta's has it finished? It's finished up, hasn't it?
I think I saw that it's just managed to get resurrected somehow, but I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to chase it up. But yeah. It's the festival thing's always been a little bit hard for me. People don't see me as a festival artist, but anyway, it's how it is.
It's how it is, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of a question earlier as well. I know that you've got some beautiful gear. So I always look at some of your some posts and it's like, oh, it's a sexy looking guitar or amp or whatever. So if everything burnt down and you had, you know, an insurance payout for, let's say, $5,000, what guitar and amp would you buy to create the sounds that you like? What necessary items do you think you would start fresh with?
I've got to say the necessary items for me is definitely the 2 rock amplifiers. $5,000 isn't going to cover it anymore. Maybe just. But, you know, I've been playing them since 2007, since that first trip I went to in the US. That was one of my things that I wanted to play one of those amps because I'd known about them for a long time. And I went to the factory and I got one from there. And so that's not that it's a sound you can't achieve with other amps. I think that's the hard thing with the whole Dumble 2 rock sort of thing is that you can definitely achieve that sound, but it's the feel of it under your fingers. It's I almost equate it to the way a really good acoustic guitar feels under your fingers. It's the way it kind of bounces and gives, and it translates that to pretty much any guitar. So, you know, for me to be out for playing and enjoyment, having that sort of 2 rock thing is pretty into that. Guitar wise, man, you know, where would you start? It's kind of hard.
I know it's a terrible question.
Yeah. You know, obviously you know, my main instruments are Nick Huber guitars out of Germany, and every one of his guitars I've ever played is incredible. But once again, $5,000 isn't going to cut it. So, you know, I do play very expensive instruments in general, and it's just because they're really good. Like they just don't have any issues with them. They've just become really amazing. Like they're just sort of done when you get them. And you know, I've built a couple of parts guitars myself, which, you know, I've spent a lot of time kind of fine tuning and making them work. But those like the Nick Huber and the Collings guitars and things I play are just kind of perfection without the soullessness that comes from perfection sometimes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, they're just really amazing instruments. So yeah, they're like once again, they are all expensive things, and I could probably come up with other more creative things, but
No, not at all. I remember the first time I saw a Collings and heard one. It was a touring folk musician came to my local town, and I was doing the audio. God, it must have been 15 years ago. And I just noticed straight away, because, you know, Australia is full of Matons and Cole Clarks, and they all have a particular sound. And then this guy brings along this Collings, you know, handmade in Austin, and I think it was kind of like a triple O sort of size, and it just like had this tone, and I was like, what is going on? And I had a play of it, and it was just incredible. So I know exactly what you're talking about, to have that precision with a bit of soul in there still, but a very playable instrument that inspires you. Yeah, it's such a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
to achieve as a maker and a player.
Yeah, and that's kind of, you know, the thing. I just don't want my guitar to be fighting me, and it's, yeah. I guess, like, with the way my career has gone, and sort of understanding how instruments are made, I've made a lot of connections with, I guess, a lot of the greatest, like, guitar builders ever, you know, that are alive still, you know. And so I have a deep appreciation for that art and the skill that makes something, you know, kind of really sound amazing. And I guess it's kind of that same idea of the niche of a craft. Like, that's kind of where I'm at career-wise as well. And those guys are in that, and I kind of appreciate spending the money to, you know, support and propagate what they do. Yeah.
Yep. I'm sure they're happy to help support you as well if they have to. Like you said, if you're playing at NAMM, supporting all those great brands you were mentioning, like that's a pretty good, you know. It's good.
Yeah, and
good
you know,
for,
like
good
those,
for everyone.
Well, those guys just become family. You know, like Two Rock amps, like, you know, the guys that are the owners are just like, they're just great friends of mine. They're like, you know, I stay at their houses when I've been in the States, even before they owned the company. Like, we've just all been friends for a long time. So you just, and you know, like, it's that thing, you just want to work with the best people there are. If they also make the
100%.
best stuff that's around, then that's really great too.
Yeah.
But it's the same as when you know, playing on stage, you know, you want the kind of the best people around you. Even sometimes before you want the best musicians, you want the best people first.
Yeah, I agree. Cool, man. Well, thanks very much for your time today. We're going to wrap it up there, I reckon. We've covered a good amount of ground. Thank you very much for your time and your energy. And yeah, I look forward to hopefully catching up sometime in the real time, in the flesh.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd love to play a Two Rock at some stage too. So maybe I need to come to Newcastle and have a little
have a
work
hang.
trip.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool, man. Well, thanks again, and yeah, take it easy.
My pleasure, man. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, folks, to another episode of Say It With Guitars. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast, share it around to your mates, leave a good review, and hopefully we'll see you next time.